Dhyanandan will wear the next week. But after some time, people started saying, what the hell, Machan, you're wearing the same thing I the same. So what they decided was to dye it. Okay, they took the shorts to dye it to dark brown. This is typical of Sivanandan. He is prepared to take any number of risks, right? And they dyed it, and they paid him some 5 rupees for that dye. So Sivanandan was the first one to wear it, and then it went on, and then Dhyanandan wore it. And then after about 1 month, they decided to wash it. No, those days the dye is gone. So they went and had a fight with this dyeing sort of chap who dyes it, and then got £2.50 back because it was a month later. So Sivanandan was happy because he had to pay this Delco $2.50, so he paid in return. That's one of the sort of stories that's told all the time. I told you before, he's not a sportsman. He loved sports. He wanted to sort of take part in sports, particularly with the Ariala crowd, like Devedra and others. They were bright sportsmen. Because in St. John's, if you're a sportsman, you're going to be from Ariala. But then he was a good commentator. He's good in sort of English and Tamil, so he used to commentate to us, and we are very happy. And then he said he will write it. And then the headmaster come to know it, and he started sort of asking him to write about things. And in the magazine, he wrote about sort of the sports activities every year. And I'm not sure whether you all know, there was another paper, there was a journal, it was a paper, yeah, it's called Teepori. Have you heard of Teepori? Okay. And that is a fantastic sort of journal. And it's always sort of very, very fantastic headlines. What you read inside, there's nothing inside, but fantastic. It's like ordinal, right? Or it's like sort of, I can't remember, sort of, yeah. Ordinal, Ulladayum Valiyadayum Theriyan. Right? So there was lots of headlines that Sivanandan actually cleared, and then he became the sports editor for Teepori. But then Teepori was sort of during that sort of, I think you remember the days when Koglamba case, and he was never in school, you see. He was all over the place, and then he was as those days the children of people started school at the age of 3, and then by the time they get to go to O levels, you're 14. Your brain is not mature, so you fail A levels and then O levels, and then you go to Special 5. It's a class called in St. John's called Special 5. The people who go to Special 5 are the people, the failures. But it is where you actually became a man, right? You are taught everything, because it's a mixture of everything. You're molded into a man. So Sivanandan, actually, he got hold of these people, and then he has become the sort of editor for the magazine every year we publish at school. And then he went on to got through the exams and went on to the advanced level, and then he went to Special 6 again. He failed the first attempt, like most of us. I think it's not something sort of, nowadays I think boys and girls will be ashamed if we tell you that we never got through the exams, but we sort of went through a bit of a, what do you call it, our interests are different anyway. But we went on and then passed the exam, then went to the medical school, and I was part of one of them anyway. Anyway, that is Sivanandan St. George. But he is actually, I think somebody said, religion is not his forte. except for Nallur Tiruvilla. And that he went for something else. We sat on the class or whatever, and have a chat and sort of pass comments to various people who pass that way. And he never passes any comments to any girls. He's actually, I don't know how he got married actually, he was sort of anti-girls. And anyway, he was well educated. His father was a very religious man and a head teacher in various schools, and so is his mother. And they had this book called Upanishad. It is one of the best Vedas. It's before the Rig Veda and all the others. And he has read that. And only one page he read. You know what he read? No, you don't have to go to the temple to get to God. There are various ways of doing it. One is you dedicate yourself to God. The other one is to go and pay penance and whatnot. The other way, the easiest way to do service to the people, help other people. And that's what he did. He helped the community. He's helped many, many, many people. And he took risks that you and I won't even take risks. And he was very successful. And that is why I think that God thought, now this man has done so much, and I think he has done enough for him to come to me now. And it took him a bit earlier than what the family and what he would have expected. Anyway, I'm sure he is in the safe hands, Yoga and children. So I hope we will sort of celebrate his life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nami. May I call upon Dr. Steve Hugh, his erstwhile colleague, to come and elaborate on his work where they associated with. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me to be here, and I'm starting. Yes. Thank you so much for asking me to be here, and I'm most honored to be with you to share this occasion. It occurs to me that I may be the only one here who's never been to Sri Lanka. And we've heard a lot about Siva's love for his family, for nature, for culture, for his professional associations. I'd like to make tribute to one of his other passions, and also his achievements in postgraduate education in the United Kingdom. I've known Siva and his family for about 30 years. We actually became general practitioners around the same time, back in '89, in Enfield, Harrogate, although we never actually practiced together as doctors. Our paths actually first crossed when, at that time, this horrible word called medical audit landed on general practice. It was much feared at the time as a tool to check upon what doctors were doing. And Dr. Siva and I did our best to actually shall I say, undemonize this subject and actually help our colleagues to use it to their advantage. We actually reshaped, now called Continuing Professional Development, CPD, those days called Continuing Medical Education, CME, reshaped that to include what we call self-directed learning groups. That was actually Siva's idea. And gained recognition to collect these brownie points, which GPs needed to. And starting from a very local small group of 6-8 doctors, he started expanding this, spreading the idea, and he called it a movement. And he used words like the ripple effect. And this ripples made the movement grow until it became recognized nationally. And we presented its work, our work, at conferences both national and international. And you see, this is the World Conference of Family Doctors Conference in Finland in 2001. So he did some workshops, he spoke to the people there, and he took this work very seriously, but he was also able to have some fun outside that. This is the Olympic Stadium back in the 50s, which Finland hosted the Olympic Games. And we just wander around a bit. Now this picture, this is a small anecdote. So we, those days in Finland, was eating cold fish every day. And in the end he said, look, I'm going to get fish poisoning. We've got to get some Indian or Chinese food. We didn't find any Indian restaurants, but we found this little Chinese joint. So we said, sit down and look at the menu. It's all very long Finnish words, all 15 letters long. But this blonde waitress spoke English, so she explained to us, and we take the dish randomly, which is very obvious. Beef cooked with cabbage and sweet corn. I still remember that. So we tasted it, and it didn't taste anything like Chinese food or anything anyway. But we hungry ate it, and I said, I don't know what province this food came from. I don't know. I thought I knew all Chinese food. He said, why don't we meet the chef? So we asked the waitress to bring the chef. And when he came out, we nearly died. This gentleman, who had very dark skin, tight curly hair. He was a Moroccan. And I said, well, man, what are you doing here? He said, well, look, I came to do a master's in engineering. I got stuck here. And they didn't give me a job, so I went to work as a kitchen hand in a Chinese restaurant. And I observed, and I decided, oh, well, my own man, the Finnish food don't know any of the Chinese food. I'll be all right. So that was it. And we also wrote an article, and then wrote a part of a book, you see. And we didn't write the whole book, we wrote a chapter in it. And next slide, please. That's the beginning of the chapter, which is, you can still see in the bookshops. And we used to meet on in his house back in Clay Hall in Ilford to think about things, how to take things forwards. And he used to give me a little drink when I arrived. He said, this is very good for opening up the blood-brain vessels. Well, we stopped drinking after some time, but we didn't drink much, but we both gave up alcohol. But his office was lined with books, not just on medicine, but a range of things on education, on management, on philosophy, on religion, and of course, medical books. And I think that reflects on the breadth and the depth of his thinking. And he often quoted ideas in his work, like the 80-20 principle, the Hawthorne principle, and so on. And yet, to me, he was ever such a humble person. And he used to tell me how, in his homeland, 1,000 years ago, society was a very equal place. And Siva's approach to people was always from the grassroots, about being honest and reflective, but in a safe environment. And just to explain a bit more about him, a personal word about him, and myself, after struggling for many years of general practice, educational projects, I once took my eye off the ball and got stuck in some trouble started by other people in the practice. And once people hear about these things, they all walk to me, want to take a phone call from me. But Siva, one of the few, when she came down and said, look, I know you didn't do anything, but that's fine. And he actually, over the years, helped me to stand on my feet. And in the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to do some development work in his practice. And I could see that he used the same methods to help quite a number of colleagues who got mildest difficulties, whether it's personal or professional. And he always spoke about treating people with respect and going the extra mile. That's what he always told his team colleagues. I happen to know he did not frequent the temple, but I believe he's someone who actually practiced the principles from his heart. And to me, he was an intelligent, a wise colleague, a mentor, a family friend who lives just up the road from me, and above all, a friend in need. Thank you.
Thank you very much to you. It seems to be my opportunity to say a few words. As we are running out of time, so I'll try and be as concise as possible. My initial intention was trying to give a synopsis of Siva's early working days in Jaffna, which to me formed a lot of his character to work on a number of endeavors later in his life. Though I knew Siva in the medical school, it was in Jaffna where we worked together that we had a great opportunity to get to know each other. He had this inherent charm and quickly became very popular all around the hospital. As lots of comments were made earlier, that how helpful he is to the ordinary people, irrespective of their power or position. And that made him extremely popular. And he became a dominant face in the hospital soon. This was in the early 70s. And he became the regional secretary of the Government Medical Officers Association for Jaffna. And his commitment, devotion and passion to achieve objectives was very effective. Therefore, anyone who gets friendly with him gets immediately bitten by the same devotion to do that. And during this period in Jaffna, the society itself was going through a tumultuous change, because that was the time, the mid-70s, when the Tamil leader S.J. Vicharvanayagan passed away in our care in the hospital. And also, which a lot of people would have heard about, might not have experienced, there was this thing about standardization of university entrance. And lots of youngsters in Jaffna were affected by that. All of a sudden, their entry to the university took a nosedive because of this sudden change. And this was felt as a little unrest just beneath the surface and constantly bubbling about as anger. And on top of this, there was a lot of shortage of food, because the government's policies were making imports difficult. And in the midst of this, the youngsters started concentrating on agricultural means, and cash crops were very much in production, which brought about a certain amount of prosperity to the peninsula. In the middle of that, we were working in the hospital, and naturally we constantly discussed all these changes that were going on. And as you would have heard, Siva is very interested in Tamil politics, and this was one of the topics that constantly came about in all our discussions. And while this was happening, then came that 1977 communal ethnic disturbances. So there was a pogrom which brought a number of Tamils scuttling to the north as refugees from the south. And on top of that, there were a lot of Tamil doctors who were working in the south and in north central province also descended to Jaffna Hospital because that was the place they were asked to report, since they were not safe where they were working. In addition, there were a number of medical students from both Kandy and Colombo also ended up in Jaffna Hospital. Now therefore all of a sudden we had the hospital full of doctors and medical students walking around, and Siva was the GMOA secretary. You can imagine the chaos. Therefore, but he never faltered. He put his heart and soul into it and organized everything and got the doctors a special common room where they could sit. This was done by clearing up a disused ward, by washing and getting furniture for the place. This was to accommodate the doctors. Then also he went around the hospital, got the consultants to accommodate these additional medical students who were there to give them tutorials. And therefore all these things, he did it with the help of his friends. But this was something that he was so